Okay, so today I'm going to demonstrate how to do pyrography. For those of you who don't know what pyrography is, just in brief, it's a method by which you would make an image onto a piece of wood or onto leather. In this case, I'm using a piece of plywood, and you're literally burning an image into the surface of the wood. Okay, and that's done by using this is a pyrography tool, a solid tipped pyrography tool. There are lots on the market. This is by no means the best type, I believe. It's a fairly basic one. But as I'm quite new to pyrography in the whole process, I've kind of gone for the cheaper end of the market just to kind of get me started with it. So, okay, so before I really dive in, I'll just show you a few pieces that I have actually done quite successfully. This is my stag piece, which I've used, I've burnt in the image, building up all the layers to describe the fur and the different tonal aspects of the antlers. And then I've embellished later with some coloured pencil just to kind of bring up the tones and to kind of stop it looking so brown really against the beige background of the wood. And from there, that was my previous piece, and this is my most recent piece. Again, I've worked from a reference photo, burning in the image, building up the texture and tonal range of the fur, and then I've embellished later on with some colour, in this case coloured pencil, which kind of works quite well in picking up the textural aspects of the image. Okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do for my piece this time is I've got a reference picture here. This is actually a gorilla. It's a royalty-free image, as far as I'm aware anyway. So I'm going to use this one to actually work from. And what I've done is I've made a sketch of the image, just a very loose, light sketch, just putting in the major elements of the gorilla's face there. So, just really for marking out where the position of the eyes in relation to the mouth and everything. So that's going to be my starting piece. Okay, so I've made it onto A4 there, and I'm just going to position it where I want it. Okay, I think that would be a good position for it. Okay, and I can deal with the top and the bottom of the drawing as I work through it, but that will become evident as I demonstrate this. Okay, so I need to transfer the image down, and the way I'm going to do that is, as you can see, I've covered the back of the drawing there with some graphite, just working some graphite loosely over the back. It doesn't need to be super dense or anything, it just needs to be enough to get the image transferred down. So I'm just going to position it on my panel roughly where I want it to be, and just so it doesn't move about while I'm transferring, I'm just going to secure it with a little bit of masking tape, top and bottom. Okay, right, so the way I do this, I'm going to just go over the lines, probably not all of them. I probably won't do all this shading because I just really want an outline to start. So I'm just gonna go in with, I'm just using a ballpoint pen, which is to go over those lines. to be honest with you, your drawn graphite pencil lines will disappear anyway once you get into the actual mark making using the pyrography tool. But, I'm just going to follow the main descriptive lines here. Shape of the eyes, position of the eyes. Of course, I've gone ahead and done a freehand sketch from my reference photo, but if you're not confident doing that, there's nothing in the rule book to say you can't actually just trace it out, you know, print it off and trace it and do it that way. And you can also incorporate lettering. That's quite interesting to do sometimes, although I haven't really done that myself as yet. Okay, so I'm just going to get a sense of where that snout is and the lip line. So I'm just going to take up the tape just to have a look. Okay, so as you can see, I hope you can see there, you've got quite a faint line. I think that's okay actually. I think I've got enough there to actually make a start on this. Let me just put in a little bit more info on that side. This is just okay, right, so I'm going to stop that there. I'm going to take off my image and I'm just going to rub away some of these dirty marks in the graphite that's kind of transferred down. I'm just going to go straight in and start moving the tool just in exactly the same way, using exactly the same method as if I was drawing this out in pencil. So I'm using my tool like a pencil. So I hope you can see there, as I'm moving the tool around, you can see the wood darkening slightly, and you can see that it's making a sort of texture. This pyro tool came with lots of different tips with it, so there's different shape tips that you can kind of use to get different effects, but this one seems to be kind of universal one, if you like. And what I'm doing here is I'm just building up the kind of texture of the fur, making directional marks, just as I would do if I was creating the drawing. You've got to be kind of a little bit careful because, you know, it's easy to kind of lose concentration with this, and suddenly you've got a big horrible scorch mark that you didn't want to be there. And ordinarily, you know, I'd turn the piece of wood round, but just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll keep it upright so you can see. I'll have to kind of move my hands around a bit more, which can be tricky with this being so hot, because obviously I don't want to suddenly slip or lose concentration and end up burning myself. So obviously you can see that this part of the image is more of a mid-tone, but when I get to doing the eye part, it goes really, really dark. So there's a few techniques that I'd need to kind of employ to get that really dark, but obviously, you know, it's quite a lengthy, labour-intensive process, so it's something that, you know, you need to put some time into, which I'm quite happy to do. You know, the whole point for me in creating any art is really just to do with the therapeutic process of it, really. You know, I'm not in any rush to kind of to do anything, really. I think that's key to achieving something that is, you know, half decent, really. I think if you rush into something, it kind of shows in the finished piece. So you do have to be prepared, really, to put the hours in, to put the work in. But I find it incredibly peaceful and therapeutic just to sit and do this, you know, either listen to music or an audio book, or just my own, you know, my own thoughts. I'm fine just to sit and think about things. And of course it is quite important, as I say, to not lose concentration too much, because obviously you're working with a tool that is incredibly hot. I mean, you would end up with some major burns and a trip to A&E. So I can't stress enough how important it is to be careful at all times. Okay, so all I'm doing here is just working the tool over the areas that I see, you know, that has the most kind of tone or range. So into the eyes, you know, because I want to create a kind of three-dimensional feel. The other thing with this is it's really important not to kind of over tilt, because if that edge of the tool touches the wood, then you're going to end up with a really ugly scorch mark that is really difficult then to work around. I mean, there are various methods for getting around mistakes with pyrography, but it'll, you know, it takes a little bit of time to kind of, you have to go in with a wire brush and sandpaper, and even then you're not really ever going to get rid of it entirely, and then you're really having to hopefully incorporate it into your design in some way, or, you know, start again. So I just want to point those things out. Okay, one of the things I've found with making videos like this, demonstration videos, and it's something I have to kind of really work with to get better at, is to talk and demonstrate at the same time. I find it incredibly difficult to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut up basically and continue doing this. I'm going to go quiet, so I'm just going to carry on. Okay, so as you can see, I've kind of worked on this now. I've got all the essential elements in there recorded down. I've just, as you've just been observing now, just used the Pyro tool as almost as if it was a pencil. So I've just kind of used directional mark making to describe how the fur separates and sits on the head of the gorilla, which is kind of essential to all drawing, really. It's just the same kind of approach, but using obviously a very different method. So now I've kind of got the rudimentary aspects in there, I'm just going to take my rubber over and wherever I can knock out my pencil lines that are still visible, because I don't need to rely on them anymore. They were only ever going to be a guide. So, I mean, obviously where you've burnt over, directly over a pencil mark, you've kind of probably engraved it into the surface, but sometimes it's worth just going over with your rubber and getting rid of any visible ones that you can still see. Okay, so there it is. So now I'm at the stage where I want to start to work into it a little bit more and to deepen some of these tones. You know, I want to get, you know, as you can see on my reference picture here, just at the brow line, with the gorilla's head comes out quite a bit there, so it's casting quite a very deep shadow just under that brow line there, so I want to be able to work into that. So the way I'm going to achieve that really is just to continue working in with my pyrography tool, and I'm just going to layer up. So I've sort of put in lots of different marks to kind of scorch the wood quite lightly, I suppose. So the next time I go into these darker areas, can you see I'm keeping the tool moving, because the minute you kind of pause in one area, you'll end up with a horrible burn mark. But if you keep it moving, you're not pressing down too hard, and I use a sort of quite a light circular motion, you can start to deepen the tone. You can see that there on the film. So that's kind of where I'm going with this next. I'm just going to keep working over it until I'm satisfied that I've got the tonal range correct, or, you know, till I'm satisfied with the image. And then after that I'll think about maybe applying some colour to it, just to kind of further enhance it. The other thing I didn't mention before in terms of health and safety, apparently it does matter what surface you're working on. So if it's wood, it shouldn't ever be a treated piece of wood. So nothing with any kind of varnish on it, or MDF is a big no-no as well, because of, I would imagine, all the kind of adhesives that are embedded in the surface in the manufacturing process for MDF. It's lovely and smooth, so you know, the temptation is to think, oh well, that would be a fantastic surface to work on, but from what I can gather from the experts, of which I'm not one at all, is, yeah, MDF is a big no-no for that. So this is just a piece of plywood that's untreated, hasn't got any surface on it at all, so it's bare wood. You know, I've done drawings on plywood before, and it's got a lovely tooth to it. So it's great for lots of different sort of projects like this, and now with pyrography. So yeah, that would be my recommendation if you can get yourself some nice plywood. Otherwise, you know, for other found pieces of wood, I would recommend stripping it right back to the bare wood. So, you know, do whatever it takes to do that. Again, I'm no expert. I'm sort of still learning the process of this. But I'm finding I'm kind of taking to it quite well because, you know, I'm used to drawing and painting, so it's not too dissimilar really to drawing. There you go. As you can see, I've worked in to that eye, so I've deepened the tone over here in this eye. Okay, and I've really, let's see if I can zoom in on that a bit. Hi there. Okay, so this is where I'm up to with this particular piece that I'm working on at the moment. As you can see, if you watched previously, you know, I have kind of worked into this a little bit more. I've deepened some of the tones. I've added in a lot more directional mark making to describe the fur and how the fur lays over the shape of the head. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of show you how I'm kind of working into these really deep tones, because what you kind of end up with when you first you take the tool over in the first pass is something that's quite mid-tone. So as you can see there on my reference picture, there's quite a bit of variation in the tones. So I really want to capture that to give it a sense of 3-dimension. Okay, so I've just got my solid tool there. I've changed the nib from, let me see, I was using a shorter one yesterday just to kind of lay down the main information. I've got a slightly longer tip. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in. so you can see what I'm working with there. Hopefully you can see. Okay. So I'm going to be just working on this brow section. So with this tool, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of working slightly slower, just to kind of get some depth of colour into the burn without it scorching too deeply, because that's what you kind of want to avoid if you can. So there's a bit of a technique to it. This has been on for quite a while now, so it's fairly hot, and I'm just angling my tool down enough without letting this part touch the wood. So just hopefully you'll be able to see this. So if I just angle it down, and I'm just working slightly slower, can you see how that is deepening that tone? So I've already gone over it a number of times with the other tool, just to kind of get the main mid-tone in. Do need to be quite careful that you don't angle it down too much, because then you'll get scorch marks from the base of the pen, which you kind of want to avoid if you can. I do want to get some nice deep tones around the eyes, because that will really help kind of make the eye itself really come out, and also lend a nice sort of three-dimensional quality to the finished work. Okay, so you can see I've done it on that side, and I want to continue across the nose, the bridge of the nose. I'm just changing the angle as well, because I don't want to get, you know, what it tends to want to do is linger in the natural grain of the wood, which can, you know, be helpful with some pieces. It just depends what you're working on. But for this piece, I don't really want to have to, you know, have to kind of lift out areas with my wire brush or anything, because I see that's probably scorched a bit too deep there, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. So you can see how that's really bringing up that tone. And I think it, you know, it really does make a difference to how it looks, how the finished work is going to actually look. One of the sort of downsides, well, from my point of view anyway, of the pyrography, is that everything can look a little bit too kind of brown, you know. So that's why I tend to want to apply a little bit of colour afterwards, which I'll do with this, and I'll demonstrate when I get to that point. But what you want to try and do when you're laying down any sort of colour is to try and maintain the integrity in the mark making, because after all, that's the essence of pyrography, and the point of pyrography really is that you know, the burning element has to be evident in the final piece, I feel anyway. For it to qualify as a bona fide piece of pyrography. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to take this tool over slightly quicker and lighter to kind of work into these mid-tone areas as well. I'm just working, you know, from my reference picture. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be an actual facsimile of it, you know, as long as you're getting the main elements down and it looks like the thing that you want to depict. And that's kind of good enough for me. So I'm just, you know, the photograph is incredibly detailed, and obviously, you know, that you can get quite a bit of detail in with this tool, but there are limits to it. So, but you know, it doesn't bother me as too much. And I quite enjoy kind of just working with the limitations of it, just to see what it will and won't do. And as I say, I'm coming at it from, you know, a painter's angle. I normally paint or work with graphite and charcoal drawings. You know, I do commission portraiture, and I teach drawing and painting to adults. So this is a bit of a different technique, but you know, if you've got a good grounding in, you know, drawing and painting, they're sort of transferable skills that lend themselves quite well to this sort of thing, I find anyway. But as I say, you know, I've found that lots of people do trace images, which is just as valid. You know, it doesn't take anything away from the pyrography technique. You know, you're still having to lay down these marks, and you know, you can still, from my point of view anyway, I don't see that there's anything wrong with doing that. I've just chosen to work off my own sketch and then just use the reference for the detail. So I hope you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of working that in, just to kind of build up on some of these deeper tones into, you know, build a feeling of 3 dimensions. So obviously on this side of the head it's considerably darker in tone, so I'm going to try and work with this tool. I might have to change to a different tool and give that a go. There is another one that I have used before that was quite successful in doing a similar thing. Now I've got another tip here to use. It's a slightly different shape. It's like a sort of leaf shape. I don't know if you can see that. With a sort of pointed tip, and it's really quite useful, I found, for if you can use the flat of that surface there. It kind of helps to really just kind of colour the wood. Okay, so I'm going to take a chance and just kind of get it on there. Okay, so that's on there. Okay, I'm just going to work this down onto the surface. So I hope you can see there. By doing that, just working on with the flat of the tool, I can kind of unify all those marks and put down a more kind of solid area of tone, and it just kind of helps build a good sort of tonal range. The other good thing about this particular tool is you can also turn it on its side and use this sort of side of it to get some really, you know, interesting marks to describe fur. You can sort of don't do it tight enough. Screw it up tight enough, it can sort of wobble about a bit. I mean, anybody, like professional pyrographers, would probably be appalled to see me doing this sort of thing. But my philosophy is, when you're trying out something new, you've just got to go for it and just take a few risks and yeah, have a play with the possibilities of it. Apparently the best ones to work with are actually the wire tip ones. You can get all sorts of different shapes of wire to create all manner of marks, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to have a go at that at some point, but just for now I'm working with this kind of this solid tipped one, which I think if you can hone your skills with inferior tools, you know, that's sometimes not a bad thing, because when you do upgrade to the top-notch stuff, you know, you've got more of an idea of what you're doing, really. Okay, I hope you can see how this is developing. I want to sort of change the whole of the tone on this side of the head, because it is actually darker. The whole thing is darker. So rather than, you know, trying to make little scratch marks or doing deep scorching, I'd rather kind of use the flat part of this tool and just kind of keep working it round in light circular motions to colour up that wood. Hope you can see that. So I'm just going to continue doing this, and I'll come back later if I've got something else to tell you. Okay, so I am going to leave that there and turn that off and let it cool down, and I'll come back to that in the morning and see how I feel about it, see if I need to modify it in any way or adapt it in any way. There's an area here which I'm thinking I might just keep just the pure wood, because when I come to colour it, I'll deal with that section there. But I sort of quite like that as it is. But as I say, I'll, come back to it tomorrow and see how I feel about it then, and either work on it or I'll start to colour it, and I'll come back and show you how I'm going to go about doing that. Okay, I hope that was useful. I hope you enjoyed watching that. And as I say, please do, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that you get updates from me when I post up new content, which I'm hoping to do more of in this new year. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye.